Welcome to Sponsored Posts, behind the lens of how influential content is made. I'm Justin Moore. I'm the founder and CEO of Trending Family, which is an influencer marketing agency that launches campaigns with family-friendly influencers. Today, I am so excited to be joined by Dzung Lewis from Honeysuckle. She has over 800,000 followers across platforms like YouTube and Instagram. She also has a very well-read blog. Dzung says that the goal of her channel is to inspire young women around the globe to use food and lifestyle choices to develop creativity, self-confidence, and community in everyday life. She's also a mom to her daughter, Erisy, and has another one on the way. Welcome, Dzung.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's great to have you on. And I thought we could just start off. If you could share a little bit about your background, about how you decided to start your blog and your channel, and a little bit more about your family. Would love to start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, oh my gosh, the YouTube channel started a long time ago just as a fun little project that my husband, Nate, and I, well, we were just dating at the time, but it was back in 2009 after we had attended like one of those Sunset Magazine festivals. They have like cooking demos and stuff like that. And I told him, I want to be like that. I want to be like Giada. And he's like, why don't you? I'm like, what are you talking about? And so that was just like the beginning of YouTube. And we went back home and he said, let's film something for fun. And we filmed our first episode that night, and it was ridiculous. If you go back and look at that video, we've come a long way. But it was kind of a fun little project that we did. And then we stopped doing it because I was working in finance at the time. It was a very demanding career. So once I got laid off in 2012, YouTube was starting to have, I guess you call them influencers now, but at the time, like they were just YouTube stars and people were making a career out of it. So we started being more serious about YouTube and we've just been uploading every week since 2012.
That's incredible. But when you started your channel, you didn't have any kids, right?
No, I wasn't married. We were just like two 20-something-year-olds that just wanted to be creative for the day. And we did like 10 episodes and it wasn't something that was taken seriously. It was just kind of a fun thing we did. And like blogs back then didn't really exist either. And I had thought I wanted to have my own catering company instead. That's why the name started off as Honeysuckle Catering. And I thought it would, help me get business. And I actually did get quite a bit of business from the local community to cater like dessert tables and little parties at their houses and stuff like that. That's what I thought the channel was good for, was to help me get business in that sense. But then things completely shifted and everything is now digital because I realized I don't want to be a caterer.
Right. And now, was cooking something that you were always into? Like, was it always a passion or is it something that you kind of discovered later in your life?
I've always loved to cook. I grew up with my grandma who immigrated from Vietnam in the 80s. And so she lived with us. So every Saturday morning, and I was really young, I was like 4 or 5, we would watch PBS Saturday cooking shows on there. And so I would be super inspired by like Martin Yan, Jacques Pepin. And that was our thing that we did together every Saturday morning. And then afterwards we would cook for the family and I would be her little sous chef. That kind of carried on throughout my life. And I love to cook. I love being in the kitchen. It's like a stress reliever. It's just like a place where I feel really calm and happy and creative.
Absolutely. And, when you were first starting out doing these videos with your then boyfriend, when did you realize that this kind of fun, creative outlet was turning into something more significant?
It wasn't until several years later when we started getting approached by businesses to make videos for them. And at the time, like I had no idea how to negotiate prices or like do anything. It was just like, you want me to feature something? Like, how cool. Okay. And then we started working with, like MCNs came along. And so we signed on with them and they it wasn't really that helpful. But then we started working with like Tastemade and they started offering us like money to make videos. And I'm like, whoa, like, you can get paid for this?
Hmm.
It was crazy. And then things just kind of started picking up from there.
So when you were first making those initial episodes, how did you grow your following? You said that you were getting some good feedback on those initial episodes that you posted, but what were you doing? Were you cross promoting them on different social platforms, or how were you approaching that?
Back in 2009, when we were doing those videos, it was just to share it with friends and family. And I remember the chocolate souffle with Grand Marnier was like the fourth episode that we ever did. It reached 35,000, which at the time was really big for us because,
Yeah.
I mean, I had maybe 10,000 subscribers at that point, and we weren't doing anything. People were just finding it organically because Instagram didn't exist yet, and it was just through word of mouth and search, I guess.
So because you've, kind of been there from the very early days of YouTube, what would you say are your favorite things about YouTube, and maybe some of your not so favorite things about YouTube that you've kind of learned over the years?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things about YouTube is just being able to discover new channels. I mean, there's so many that I love to watch. It's like real life that people share with you through videos. So I almost feel like I know them just by watching their videos. The thing I don't like about YouTube, especially these days, and I think it's across all platforms, is just like the algorithm where you really struggle. I mean, the space is so saturated that you really struggle to get your videos out there. And it's not necessarily that your work is bad or that it's any less quality or creativity or anything like that. It's just you have to play the algorithm game now, which is just, I think it stifles
Hmm.
creativity a little bit because then you end up making videos for views and not because of what you originally intended to have the channel for.
So when YouTube made that pretty significant change, let's say 4 or 5 years ago, where they switched over to having essentially watch time be the biggest factor in terms of suggesting your video to other people, did you find that that had an impact on your creative strategy in terms of how long you were making your videos or anything like that?
If you look back on our old videos, they were all averaging around 3 to 4 minutes. And I think that was the sweet spot. I mean, I call my viewers busy bees because, like, we're busy. We don't have time to sit and watch cooking shows that are 30 minutes long. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
so they come to my channel for quick, easy ideas that seem completely doable, which they are completely doable. And I break it down and I am considerate of their time. But since the algorithm changed, like the sweet spot is somewhere around 10 minutes. And so we had to shift our strategy a little bit where I ended up doing more recipe ideas. So, I mean, in a way, I increased the value of the video because we ended up making several small recipes within one larger video so that it could give them multiple ideas and they can just pick and choose which ones they want to watch.
You mentioned, when brands first started approaching you, you kind of realized that this may be a thing. You could turn this into kind of a viable career. So tell me about the story of your first brand deal.
I remember the first one that we ever did was with Kin Community, and they had offered me something with Truvia, the stevia sugar thing. And we were flown down to LA and they were taking care of all of the production. But then I had to kind of read their lines
Hmm.
or just, it was very scripted and it was just not, it was interesting. It was a good learning experience, but it was very exciting to me, but then it was also very scripted because they were producing everything. And so I had to kind of say what they wanted to. And to a point these days, you are given talking points, but they want it to be integrated naturally
Hmm.
with my voice and my channel and what our audience. So I think it's come a long way with sponsored content where they understand how this works now.
That's a great point. And I think that's something that a lot of brands kind of struggle with is, they have their own brand team and their legal team and their own kind of standards of how they want the brand depicted or represented, and I think that there is definitely a balance of them realizing that they want to give the creator like you mentioned, the latitude to be able to be authentic and talk about it in their, how they usually film videos on their channel, because that's why people follow them, right? At the same time, they're oftentimes compensating you to make a video about their product. So there's like a certain, there's certain key messages that they want to relay in the content. And so how do you, when you get into those situations where a brand is being a little bit more difficult about, what they want you to say or the edits or that kind of thing, how do you go about describing to them why that's not a good idea?
Yeah, absolutely. We've run into that so many times, and there are certain brands that are so much easier to work with than others. We've actually had to pull out of one campaign because they were so adamant about this whole list with 15 talking points
right.
that they wanted it to be in the first minute. I'm like, that is video suicide. Like, you don't understand the drop off of that, especially if you want these talking points done, I need to spread them out throughout the video organically. You can't just have me sitting there talking through 15 of these bullets that, are very technical that a lot of the viewers might not understand. They're going to get bored and they're not going to want to sit through that. So you're not going to get views. And I don't want to hurt my reputation or my channel's reputation just by doing this. And so we tried to compromise and they wouldn't budge. So we just decided it was not the right campaign for us. And what I've learned is that you should have this discussion up front and understand before you accept like a brand deal what they want to share with your audience. And if it's not the right fit, don't be afraid to step away from it. But I think the best thing to do is always just kind of let them know, this is how YouTube works. This is what my channel typically gravitates towards. And I've had a long partnership with another brand that understands that. They have quite a bit of talking points as well, but it's done so organically that you can't even really tell. And I love the brand too. So I think, that gets people more excited than just spilling out a bunch of talking points that they don't really care about.
So I think a lot of brands still, especially some of the more traditional ones, still look at working with influencers as just kind of like another place to put advertising dollars. They're going to do their TV budget and they're going to do their out of home on billboards and print and magazines and stuff like that. And then they're going to devote a certain portion of the budget to influencers. And how would you recommend a brand think about influencer marketing as opposed to kind of these other different channels that they're advertising?
I think the difference between having a TV ad versus using brand influencers to promote your brand is that there's no personal touch when you see an ad on TV. It's so impersonal, whereas when you're working with an influencer, they talk and communicate with their audience almost every single day, whether it's on Instagram or it's on YouTube. So there's like that trust there. So if your influencer stands by a certain brand, their viewers or their audience will have that trust and, they will believe them when they like something. For example, I get questions about my pots and pans all the time because I use it all the time, like naturally on camera, off camera, on IG stories or whatnot. And so people know and see that I use that product and they always ask me like, where can I get that pot? So it comes off a little bit more authentic, I guess you can say, versus just spewing an ad on TV because they have a new product out or something like that. Now, I think when there's new product launches, I think it's important for brands to introduce it to the influencers. A lot of influencers get like those PR packages to try out. And if they like it, they will recommend it and whatnot. And so I think that's a really smart way for the businesses to work with influencers these days as well, just to organically introduce new products.
To your last point, when brands send you product, let's say it's just a PR sample and there's no explicit expectation of a review or a post in exchange for that, how do you determine whether to showcase something? Because I'm sure, there are some products that you get in your mailbox that you say, oh, this is really awesome. I want to tell my followers about that. How do you determine whether, kind of what you showcase in your content?
So I don't show everything that I get sent. I mean, we get sent a lot of things that I don't necessarily enjoy or need.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think using it is really important, at least trying it. And then if I like it, I'll recommend it. I mean, I learned this from working at Sunset Magazine. We used to have like a free table where the editors would just give away whatever they didn't like. But if they liked it, they would recommend it. And so I think that was a really good training for me to have and be aware of as well, because you want it to be real. People trust you, so you don't want to ruin that trust by just, I guess, selling out to everything. And so if I like it, I'll recommend it, because that's essentially what people come to us for anyways, is to discover new products or new ideas or new, what have you.
It's interesting because you've talked quite a bit about wanting to ensure that the brands you're partnering with or the content that you're making is resonating with your followers, right? Because at the end of the day, that is, the most important thing. You want to make content that resonates and is helpful for them, right? And so do you find that you think in your head, you have this kind of persona in your mind of what your viewers want? Is that something that is a big factor in determining the types of content you make just organically, as well as, the types of brands that you partner with?
I think so. I mean, I definitely want to give them what they want to see. Otherwise, your channel might not exist if you just make things that, people are not interested in. So I definitely keep what they want in mind. And I've been doing it for so long that I have a good idea of what they like to see. And so I always try to I call it the honeysuckle twist, where I'll make something, but I'll put a unique spin on it just to make it a little bit more interesting.
Absolutely. I remember the partnership that we worked on with Ragu. You did, I believe, a zoodles recipe incorporating the spaghetti sauce, right? Instead of a traditional spaghetti recipe.
Yeah, that was when zucchini noodles were like very trendy.
Mm-hmm,
Or that was
mm-hmm.
like the new thing. And I thought it would be fun to introduce that to my audience too. And it totally worked. People still make that grilled chicken parmesan today with zoodles, and I get tagged on it. And it's pretty exciting.
And so, like you mentioned, you've been on social media for many years and you have evolved as both a chef as well as a person, right? I mean, you are married now, you have a growing family. So how has that changed your interest in terms of the content that you create, as well as, you've chosen to include your daughter in some of your content. So how have you thought about that in terms of including your family on social media?
That's such a hard question, because I don't ever want to overexpose my kid, plural, in the future. I don't ever want to overexpose them, just because, we are mindful this is our thing. And I don't know if they necessarily want their photos plastered all over social media. So every now and then, just because it's part of our story, our family life, people are interested in seeing it. They ask about Erisy. Even Ollie, our dog, they ask about him all the time if they don't see photos. And I'm like, do you still have Ollie? I'm like, yes, I do. But I mean, I want to keep it mostly about food. And when I post something, it should always add some kind of value to the person reading or watching it. It's not all about me.
Absolutely. And so to that point, when sharing beyond just, let's say, food tutorials or recipe content, when you start sharing your life, has that been challenging in any way?
I mean, you're always going to get like these negative comments that sting a little bit, but it is what it is. I mean, that's social media for you. You're going to get comments that you don't want to hear, but you're also the one putting yourself out there. So you just have to take it as it comes and not take it so personally. I have learned through the years not to, but I mean, I feel like it comes with the territory.
So Dzung, when you partner with a brand, inevitably sometimes, especially if, it's a sponsored post, there are going to be comments about how, oh my gosh, you sold out, or I don't like that brand, or I don't like that product, which is just kind of something that comes with the territory of partnering with brands on social media. So do you have any advice for brands of how they should navigate that, how they should think about that?
Yeah, I think it's like I mentioned earlier, it's really important for a brand to work with an authentic influencer that really believes in their brand, because I think naturally the influencer will back up the brand. But it's important to explain why this is good for someone that doesn't see that side. I think it's important to tell them why you stand by this brand because you're choosing to work with that brand. You should be able to defend them and say why you like it. I think the influencers should always work with a brand that they believe in so that if this does happen, it's important that you explain why you worked with them and why you believe in it. Because it comes from a real place, not something that the brand has to feed you a line to, like damage control or something. Because I don't think that's good for either side.
So I think one of the challenges that a lot of brands have is that they don't know how soon they need to bring the influencer into the prospect when they're wanting to start a campaign. So I think a lot of more traditional brands are used to putting together a fully baked kind of campaign or creative brief. And then there's another mindset where it's, okay, well, maybe we shouldn't fully bake this yet, and we should reach out to prospective influencers and get their take on how they would talk about the product in their content, because at the end of the day, right, that's really what's going to determine whether a piece of content is going to be successful, right? So how do you think about that in terms of in your mind, when would you prefer to be brought into the discussion?
Yeah, I think what I really appreciate when approached by a brand is that they give me the freedom to come back with concepts, and they'll want 2 or 3. And I'll think of different types of ideas and they'll pick and choose which one they like. And then they'll give me the talking points to integrate it. Because I think we know what works on our channel and the types of videos that our audience wants to see. And so when you already have a fully fleshed out brief, we'll try our best to navigate that and integrate that into the content. But I just don't feel like it's as creative as it can be, because then you're kind of put into a box of what you want to produce for the brand versus doing something that makes sense for your audience to integrate the brand. And I know there's a lot of pushback sometimes from the brand because they want a certain type of vision, but I think it should be more of a collaborative process so that the video is successful, that you get the views, that you get the types of comments. I've found that when I do an integration where I come up with the concept, it performs so much better.
The other thing I think we're seeing a lot more of is brands, like you mentioned, your experience working with Truvia, where you were kind of the talent, right? You were the star. You went down, there was a big production, kind of more think of a traditional TV commercial or something like that, right?
Yes.
So I think we actually are definitely seeing a lot of that where brands are still wanting to do those kind of high production value videos. They want influencers to be the stars of the show, rather than an actor or something like that. Are you comfortable with that approach? Is that something you still want to pursue? Maybe is that not a direction that you see yourself pursuing in the future?
I would definitely be interested in doing that still. A few years ago, I went to New York to film. It was a produced series with Bon Appetit and Princess Cruises, and it turned out so well. And that did not live on my channel, but I would have been fine if it did because it matched my brand. It was something that I was super excited to do, and it fit within what I would have put on my channel anyways. So it really depends. If it's too far off where it's just straight up commercial, then I don't know. We'd have to see. It's case by case scenario. But I think that when it's done right, it can work for both sides.
What was so successful about that partnership in your mind?
Well, I think it was about travel and food. So first of all, those two things are just two of my favorite things. And Bon Appetit is such a great brand. And for Princess Cruises, we made dishes that were featured on the cruise ship.
Wow.
At any certain location. Yes. And the food was delicious. And it was just really fun.
That sounds like an amazing opportunity. And I think that that's, something when we talk with other creators, that's something we hear a lot, which is that had they never really gotten into this space, they would have never really had the opportunity to work with these amazing giant brands who are finding value in what you're doing,
And the thing is that they understand how this works, like the media side of things. They understand like how to produce beautiful content too that resonate with their viewers or what have you. I mean, Bon Appetit is one of the biggest channels on YouTube now, and I love watching their videos, so I think understanding how the platform and how like the audience will respond to certain types of content, like produced content like that, will help. You don't want it just to come off as, another TV ad featuring a influencer that you might know. I mean, it would be exciting for someone to see. It's like, oh, hey, I know that person, but you still want it to resonate and for someone to be like, oh, yeah, the content in this is actually valuable. Like, I think at the end of the day, it always has to bring some kind of value for the viewer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And to that point, I mean, so much about influencer marketing and YouTube and Instagram and just social media in general has changed over the last decade, right? Are there any kind of predictions that you have for the next, let's say, 1 to 2 years, whether it's a platform specific prediction, like you see things moving in this direction with YouTube or Instagram or something like that, or just more generally observations about this space? Is there anything that you're thinking about right now?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, we think about this all the time with just how platforms and like influencer marketing is going to evolve. I'm seeing a lot of influencers kind of branch out and develop their own business because they have gained that kind of trust. It's a lot easier for a lot like beauty and fashion collaborations to be successful. I'm interested in seeing how the food space evolves just because you don't see a lot of influencers coming out with like food products. They come out with cookbooks and whatnot, but not necessarily the same way as like the fashion and beauty influencers. I think in terms of integration for platforms and brand, YouTube especially has shifted more towards this like vlog culture. And so I think there are some channels that have integrated brands so seamlessly in their vlogs where even though it's a sponsored piece, they do it so well where it just works. And I think that's the type of thing that we're probably going to see more and more, which is nice. It's not so much of like a commercial.
Absolutely. And so is that going to impact your content strategy? Do you think you'll do more vlogs as a result?
I've started toying with the idea, but I'm still trying to figure out for my own channel, like what works and what my audience wants to see. Obviously, the pregnancy stuff is just me talking to them. I don't expect a lot of views because people subscribe to my channel mostly for like food content. I think that'll always be the core. And I think there's still a huge market for it, even though it's completely saturated. We just have to do it in a way that's a lot more relatable rather than me teaching them.
This conversation has been super interesting, and I'm just kind of curious, what is next for you?
I have a very big project that I am working on that will be released in 2020. So that is my next baby that's coming out. In terms of focusing for the channel, definitely with 2 kids, there will be somewhat of a shift. But I think that's really where that vlog culture comes in as well, where you see real life integrated with like this very polished and button up channel. But I'm just trying to figure it out still. I think, we love what we do. And so we're evolving every day with the platforms, with our audience, and with the type of content that they want to see as well. And so I think it's going to be, a year of experimentation and just kind of seeing what works for us, what works for the viewers, what they want to see. I'm working on a few series right now that has proven successful on our channel, preparing those for my maternity leave. So in the near future, that is my new and exciting project.
Yes, we can't wait either. That is so amazing. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. So how can people find you? Like, what are your channel URLs?
You can find me at youtube.com/honeysuckle and instagram.com/honeysuckle. It's honeysuckle across the board.
Amazing. Well, thanks again. And you've just listened to the Sponsored Post podcast with your host, Justin Moore. You can subscribe to hear more great interviews and episodes via iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Trending Family, you can visit www.trendingfamily.com. See you next time.